The hallway of the Palmer House Hilton in downtown Chicago was lined with thick, crimson carpet that absorbed the sound of Silas Mercer's footsteps. It was 9:30 p.m. on a rainy Thursday night. In his left hand, Silas held a small, elegantly wrapped box from a high-end jeweler, a pair of diamond stud earrings. In his right hand, he clutched a magnetic hotel keycard. He was standing perfectly still outside of room 412. He was 34 years old, a dedicated high school biology teacher, and a man who believed with every fiber of his being that he was happily married. He had flown 400 miles to surprise his wife, Vivienne, for their 7th wedding anniversary. Silas raised his hand to knock. He wanted to see her face light up. He wanted to see the exhaustion of her corporate business trip melt away when she saw him standing there. But his knuckles never touched the heavy oak door, because before he could knock, a noise bled through the thick wood. It was a noise so sharp, so utterly jarring that it completely paralyzed him. It wasn't the sound of the television. It wasn't the sound of his wife talking on a business conference call. It was the sound of a man's deep, rumbling laughter, followed immediately by the unmistakable, breathless giggling of Vivienne. Silas stood frozen. A cold, heavy dread began to pool in the pit of his stomach. He pressed his ear flat against the cold wood of the door. "Careful, Harrison," Vivienne's voice drifted through the door, laced with a sultry, playful tone Silas had not heard in years. "You're going to spill the champagne on the bedsheets." "Let it spill," a man's voice replied smoothly. "Put it on the company card, or better yet, put it on Silas's card. Does the poor guy even check the statements?" Vivienne laughed. It was a cruel, sharp sound. "Silas, please. He's probably sitting in his recliner right now, grading biology pop quizzes, completely oblivious. He thinks I'm exhausted from merger negotiations. He actually packed my vitamins for me." "God, he is pathetic," the man chuckled, the sound of glass clinking against glass echoing in the room. "How much longer are you going to drag this out, Vive? You said you'd drop the papers on him after the inheritance cleared." "The probate lawyer said the funds from his father's estate clear on the 15th, Vivienne replied coldly. "The second that money hits our joint account, I'm transferring it to the offshore trust. Then, I'll hand him the divorce papers. I've put up with his boring, middle-class lifestyle for 7 years. I deserve a payout." Outside in the hallway, Silas stopped breathing. The air in his lungs turned to shattered glass. His vision blurred, the crimson carpet swaying beneath his feet. His father had passed away suddenly from a heart attack just 4 months prior. It had destroyed Silas. The small inheritance was the life insurance policy his father had saved his entire life to provide. And his wife, the woman he had carried over the threshold, the woman he had supported through her grueling MBA program, was sitting in a luxury hotel room with another man, actively plotting to steal a dead man's money and destroy his life. Silas looked down at the velvet jewelry box in his hand. He looked at the electronic keycard. The primal, emotional part of his brain screamed at him to swipe the card. It begged him to burst into the room, to scream, to throw the champagne bottle against the wall, to confront the monsters who were mocking his grief. But Silas was a scientist. He understood biology. He understood predators. And he knew that if a prey animal makes a sudden noise, the predator simply runs away to hide. He needed to build a trap. Silas did not swipe the keycard. He did not make a single sound. He slowly backed away from room 412, turned around, and walked silently down the long, crimson hallway. He walked out into the cold Chicago rain. He didn't know it yet, but Silas Mercer had just stopped being a victim. He had just become an architect of absolute, devastating karma. To understand the sheer, venomous cruelty of Vivienne Caldwell's betrayal, one must understand the dynamic of their marriage. Silas and Vivienne had met in college. Silas was a grounded, patient, and deeply empathetic man. He wanted a quiet life. He wanted to teach science, build a family, and live within his means. Vivienne was a hurricane of ambition. She was a corporate auditor with dreams that required a massive, sweeping income. When they first married, she claimed to love Silas's stability. She called him her rock. When Vivienne wanted to go back to school to get her master's in business administration, Silas took on extra shifts tutoring wealthy kids on the weekends to pay for her textbooks. He cooked the meals. He did the laundry. He smoothed out every single wrinkle in her life so she could climb the corporate ladder. And climb she did. By her early 30s, Vivienne was the director of acquisitions for a massive tech logistics firm in Atlanta. Her salary skyrocketed. She started wearing incredibly expensive, tailored suits. She drove a leased luxury SUV. And as her status grew, her respect for the man who had supported her completely withered and died. She began treating Silas not as a husband, but as a mildly annoying roommate. She criticized his modest teacher's salary. She mocked his outdated wardrobe. She constantly complained that he lacked the killer instinct necessary to survive in the real world. Enter Harrison Croft. Harrison was the vice president of Vivienne's firm. He was wealthy, aggressively arrogant, and completely devoid of a moral compass. He was also married, with 3 children living in a gated community. Harrison and Vivienne were cut from the exact same poisonous cloth. They viewed the world as a game, and they viewed kind people as nothing more than acceptable casualties. Their affair had been going on for over a year, funded entirely by corporate expense accounts and stolen weekends disguised as business trips. Silas had been completely, utterly blind. He had trusted his wife implicitly, until the moment he stood outside room 412. Silas flew back to Atlanta that very same night. He sat in the cramped seat of the economy cabin, staring out into the black abyss of the night sky, his mind working with cold, mechanical precision. He didn't sleep. By the time the sun rose over Georgia, the heartbroken husband was dead. In his place was a man obsessed with absolute surgical justice. Vivienne was scheduled to return home on Sunday evening. That gave Silas exactly 72 hours to secure his perimeter. He started with the money. Vivienne had been absolutely correct about one thing. The probate lawyer was scheduled to deposit his father's $250,000 life insurance payout on the 15th of the month. Because Silas trusted his wife, he had instructed the lawyer to wire the funds directly into their joint savings account. Silas drove straight from the airport to his bank. He didn't just reroute the inheritance. He opened a completely new, highly secure account at a different financial institution entirely under his name alone. He legally transferred his father's impending funds to the new account. Then, he looked at their joint checking account. Vivienne had always insisted on managing the household finances, claiming Silas was too soft with money. Silas requested a full, printed audit of their accounts from the bank teller. What he found made his blood boil. For the past year, Vivienne had been systematically siphoning thousands of dollars from their joint account, money Silas had earned teaching, into a hidden offshore trust. She had been bleeding him dry to build her own private nest egg for her impending departure. She wasn't just leaving him, she was robbing him. Silas took the financial documents, but he didn't stop there. He knew that exposing her infidelity would only result in a messy, drawn-out divorce where she would inevitably play the victim. To truly destroy a narcissist, you have to take away the one thing they value more than human life, their public reputation. Silas reached out to a man he had tutored years ago. The young man, named Marcus, was now a highly skilled cybersecurity analyst. Silas paid Marcus a handsome fee to do a deep, forensic dive into Vivienne's publicly accessible corporate metadata. What Marcus found was the ultimate silver bullet. Harrison Croft and Vivienne weren't just having an affair. They were using corporate funds, specifically a massive vendor expense account, to pay for their luxury hotel suites, their expensive champagne, and their private flights. It was textbook corporate embezzlement. It was a massive, undeniable violation of the Sarbanes-Oxley Act. Silas now held the detonator. He just needed to place the explosive. On Sunday evening, the heavy front door of their suburban home swung open. Vivienne walked in, dragging her designer rolling suitcase behind her. She looked exhausted, but her skin carried the distinct, glowing flush of a woman who had spent the weekend indulging in luxury and sin. Silas was sitting on the couch, marking a stack of biology tests with a red pen. He looked up. He forced his facial muscles to relax. He forced a warm, completely clueless smile onto his face. It was the hardest performance of his entire life. "Hey, honey," Silas said smoothly, standing up to greet her. "How was Chicago? How did the merger meetings go?" Vivienne sighed dramatically, dropping her keys onto the console table. She offered him a stiff, brief hug, barely letting her body touch his. "Exhausting," she lied effortlessly, her eyes completely devoid of guilt. "Harrison kept us in the conference room until midnight every single night. We barely had time to eat. I'm completely drained." "I'm so sorry, Vive," Silas said, fighting the urge to vomit. "I made a roast. It's in the fridge if you're hungry. Oh, and I picked up your dry cleaning for you." "Thanks, Silas. You're a lifesaver," she said dismissively, already looking at her phone. "I'm just going to take a shower and crash. Big week ahead." For the next 2 weeks, Silas lived in a psychological war zone. Every single day, he woke up next to a woman who was actively plotting his financial and emotional ruin. He poured her coffee. He kissed her cheek. He listened to her complain about her stressful days at the office. He played the part of the pathetic, subservient, naive husband flawlessly. And every time she turned her back, he tightened the noose. The 15th of the month arrived. the day the inheritance was supposed to clear into the joint account. Silas was sitting in the living room reading a book when Vivienne came storming out of her home office. Her face was a mask of panic and barely contained rage. "Silas," she said, her voice tight, "I was just checking the joint account to pay the property taxes. Your father's life insurance money didn't hit. Did you talk to the probate lawyer?" Silas casually turned a page in his book. "Oh, yeah," he said calmly, not looking up. "There was a slight delay with the underwriter. The lawyer said it's going to take another 30 days to clear the probate court. Bureaucratic nightmare." Vivienne's jaw clenched. Silas could literally see the wheels spinning in her head. She had planned to drop the divorce papers tomorrow. Now she had to endure another 30 days of playing house with the man she despised just to get her hands on the cash. 30 days, she hissed, unable to hide her extreme frustration. "That is completely unacceptable, Silas. You need to call them tomorrow and demand the funds. You are too soft with these people. They are walking all over you." "You're right, Vive," Silas said, finally looking up and offering her a soft, pathetic smile. "I'll call them tomorrow. I just don't like causing a scene." Vivienne rolled her eyes in sheer disgust and stormed back into her office, slamming the door. Silas slowly closed his book. 30 days, he whispered to the empty room. "That's exactly how long I need." 30 days later, Vivienne's tech logistics firm was hosting its massive, annual corporate gala at the St. Regis Hotel in downtown Atlanta. It was the social event of the year for their industry. The ballroom was packed with multimillionaire investors, aggressive board members, and the elite executives of the firm. Vivienne was in her element. She wore a stunning, backless crimson gown that turned heads as she walked through the room. Harrison Croft, wearing a custom-tailored tuxedo, was holding court near the ice sculpture, looking every bit the part of the untouchable corporate king. Silas was there, too, wearing a modest, 5-year-old black suit. He stood quietly near the perimeter, holding a glass of club soda, watching his wife network and charm the investors. He watched the subtle, secret glances she exchanged with Harrison. He watched the way their fingers briefly brushed when they reached for champagne from the same tray. They thought they were invisible. They thought they were the smartest people in the room. At 9:00 p.m., the CEO of the firm, a stern, incredibly intimidating man named Mr. Vance, tapped a spoon against his crystal glass to command the room's attention. The low hum of classical music faded out. 300 wealthy guests turned their attention to the grand stage. "Ladies and gentlemen," Mr. Vance's voice boomed over the microphone, "thank you all for an incredible fiscal year. Tonight, we are here to celebrate our massive fourth-quarter growth. And I want to personally acknowledge the team that made our recent Chicago merger possible." Vivienne puffed out her chest, a brilliant, arrogant smile spreading across her face. "I would like to invite our Vice President, Harrison Croft, and our Director of Acquisitions, Vivienne Caldwell, to the stage," Mr. Vance announced, leading the applause. The ballroom erupted into cheers. Harrison confidently strode up the stairs, adjusting his bow tie. Vivienne floated up behind him, radiating pure, intoxicating vanity. They stood side by side at the podium, bathing in the adoration of their peers. Silas stood at the back of the room. He reached into his breast pocket and felt the cold, hard plastic of a USB flash drive. He slowly walked toward the audiovisual booth located at the back of the ballroom. The young tech technician was busy adjusting the spotlight. "Excuse me," Silas said quietly, slipping a crisp $100 bill and the USB drive onto the technician's console. "My wife is on stage. I prepared a surprise congratulatory presentation for her." Mr. Vance said to cue it up on the main projector. The technician, completely unsuspecting and eager to please a guest at a high-end corporate event, took the drive and plugged it into the master laptop. "No problem, sir. Putting it on the main screen now." On the stage, Harrison was leaning into the microphone. "Thank you, Mr. Vance," Harrison said smoothly, flashing his $1 million smile to the crowd. This merger was a massive team effort. It required long nights, intense dedication, and an unwavering commitment to the ethical standards of this company. Suddenly, the massive 20-foot digital projector screen behind them flickered to life. It did not show a graph of the fourth-quarter earnings. It did not show the company logo. It displayed a massive, high-resolution, blown-up image of a forensic banking audit. The crowd fell silent. Confusion rippled through the ballroom. Harrison turned around, furrowing his brow at the screen. "I'm sorry, folks, it looks like we have a slight technical." Before Harrison could finish his sentence, the speakers in the ballroom completely overpowered him. But it wasn't classical music. It was the crystal-clear, digitally enhanced audio recording Silas had captured outside room 412 of the Palmer House Hilton. "Careful, Harrison," Vivienne's sultry, breathless voice echoed loudly through the silent, massive ballroom. You're going to spill the champagne on the bedsheets. The entire ballroom collectively gasped. 300 wealthy executives, investors, and Harrison's own wife, who was sitting at a VIP table in the front row, froze in absolute shock. On stage, Vivienne's face instantly drained of all color. She looked like she had just been struck by a bolt of lightning. Harrison's mouth fell open. He grabbed the edges of the podium, his knuckles turning white. The recording continued, loud and completely undeniable. Let it spill, Harrison's recorded voice rumbled through the speakers. Put it on the company card, or better yet, put it on Silas's card. Does the poor guy even check the statements? Silas, please. He's probably sitting in his recliner right now, completely oblivious. I'm transferring his dead father's inheritance to the offshore trust. Then I'll hand him the divorce papers. The audio cut off, replaced by a massive, undeniable spreadsheet on the projector screen. It detailed over $80,000 in fraudulent corporate vendor charges, routed directly to luxury hotels and jewelry stores by Harrison Croft. The silence in the St. Regis Ballroom was apocalyptic. You could hear a pin drop. Harrison's wife, a fierce, elegant woman, stood up from her chair in the front row. She didn't scream. She picked up her glass of red wine, walked directly up the stairs to the stage, and threw the entire glass perfectly into Harrison's terrified, sweating face. She turned on her heel and walked out of the ballroom without saying a single word. Mr. Vance, the CEO, looked at the screen, then looked at Harrison and Vivienne. His face was a mask of pure, unadulterated corporate fury. Harrison, Mr. Vance said, his voice echoing without the microphone. You are fired. Vivienne, you are fired. Security, escort these thieves off the premises immediately. I will be contacting the authorities in the morning. Panic erupted. The ballroom descended into absolute chaos. Investors were shouting. Board members were whispering furiously into their cell phones. Vivienne stood frozen on the stage, completely paralyzed by the sheer, devastating magnitude of her public destruction. Her career was over. Her reputation was obliterated. She desperately scanned the crowd, her eyes wide with terror, searching for an anchor. And then she saw him. Standing perfectly still at the back of the room, illuminated by the exit sign, was Silas. He wasn't crying. He wasn't angry. He was looking at her with a completely calm, terrifyingly peaceful expression. Silas raised his hand. He gave her a small, polite wave. Then he reached into his jacket pocket, pulled out a thick manila envelope, and handed it to a bewildered waiter standing nearby. Could you do me a favor and hand that to the lady in the red dress on stage? Silas asked quietly. Tell her it's from her husband. The waiter nodded. Silas turned around and walked out of the heavy brass doors of the ballroom, stepping out into the cool, refreshing Atlanta night. Inside, the waiter handed the envelope to a sobbing, hyperventilating Vivienne. Her hands shook violently as she tore it open. Inside was a single legal document. It was a petition for divorce. And clipped to the front of the petition was a sticky note written in Silas's neat, teacher's handwriting. The funds from the inheritance cleared. I just put them in a different account. Have a great life, Vivienne. The surprise is over. The fallout from the St. Regis Gala was the stuff of corporate legend. Because Silas had exposed the embezzlement on a 20-foot screen in front of the company's largest investors, the board of directors had absolutely no choice but to press maximum criminal charges to save face. Harrison Croft was investigated by the FBI for corporate wire fraud and embezzlement. Because he had funneled money across state lines to fund his illicit trips, it became a federal case. He was sentenced to 3 years in federal prison. His wife divorced him, took full custody of their children, and completely stripped him of his assets in the settlement. Vivienne's life was reduced to ash. She was named as a co-conspirator in the embezzlement suit. While she avoided jail time by turning state's evidence against Harrison, the legal fees completely bankrupted her. The offshore trust she had spent a year building with stolen funds was seized by the government. She was blacklisted from every major corporate firm in the United States. No company would ever hire an auditor who had been publicly exposed for conspiring to steal a dead man's life insurance on a hot mic. During the divorce proceedings, Vivienne tried to beg for mercy. She sat across from Silas in the mediation room, crying real, pathetic tears, claiming she had been manipulated by Harrison. Silas didn't say a single word. He let his lawyer do the talking. Because Silas had meticulously documented her theft from their joint accounts, the judge ordered Vivienne to repay every single stolen dollar with interest. Silas walked away with the house, his entire inheritance, and his absolute freedom. Today, Vivienne Caldwell lives in a small, damp apartment complex. She works as a shift manager at a discount retail store, wearing a cheap polyester uniform, completely invisible to the high society world she had sacrificed her soul to join. And Silas Mercer. Silas quit his high school teaching job. Using the money from his father's inheritance, he fulfilled his lifelong dream. He opened a small, nonprofit marine biology center on the coast of Georgia. He spends his days on the water, teaching children about the ocean, completely surrounded by peace. He never looked back. He had learned the ultimate lesson about betrayal. When someone shows you who they are, you don't fight them. You don't argue with them. You simply step back, hand them the rope, and let their own arrogance do the rest. What do you guys think of Silas's method of revenge? Was the public humiliation at the corporate gala too far, or did Vivienne and Harrison get the exact dose of karma they deserved? If there is one massive lesson to take away from this story, it is this: never underestimate a quiet, observant person. They hear everything, they see everything, and when they finally strike, they never miss. If you loved this story and want to hear more, be sure to hit that subscribe button right now. Drop a comment below with your thoughts. We read every single one. And don't forget to like the video to support the channel. Until next time, protect your peace, watch your circle, and never plot against the person who has your back.